our speaker number 12, coming to us from the future, Karl Hughes. Let me read a little bit of his introduction. Karl Hughes has a background in strategic planning, facilitating executive level business planning and project operating reviews. He is currently the program quality director, number 3, from Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania. And he was recently the president of the first club to reach President's Distinguished in the Distinguished Club program and for quality and educational goals. Last year, he competed and placed in the district final of 3 categories of the same contest: international speech, impromptu speaking, and speech evaluation, and received the Distinguished Toastmaster Award and Toastmaster of the Year Award, a district officer for the year award, and is listed as a star award. His speech, and I've got to get to my title after that, and let's see, where are you? Well, Karl, you're going to have to give your own title because I missed in my notes here. I don't have it written down. So, Karl Hughes.
Tom, the title is Digging for Gold.
Digging for Gold, right? I wrote that down somewhere and I didn't write it big enough on my notes. Thank you for that. Digging for Gold, Karl Hughes.
It's 1880 in the small Australian country town of Carisbrook. It's gold rush time, and the little community is a hive of activity. 7-year-old Matilda Aston, known as Tilly, is standing on the boardwalk next to the general store, shielding her face from the hot Australian sun. She's excited because she can hear the sound of the Cobb & Co stagecoach rolling into town. She can hear the crack of the whip, the jingle of the horses' harnesses, and she can smell the dust as it kicks up from the street. Tilly would love to see that stagecoach, but she can't. Tilly was born into a dark world. Tilly is blind. In 1880, a blind girl in a small country town in Australia was destined to a life of poverty of mind, body, and spirit. But not Tilly. Tilly's got her prospecting tools. She's got her mind, her heart, and her own 2 hands, and she's digging for gold. Mr. Toastmaster, ladies and gentlemen. As a young child, Tilly learned to read and write Braille at the Asylum and School for the Blind in Victoria. She worked so hard at her studies that as she grew older, she got entry into university, the first blind person in Australia to do so. But there was a problem. There was no Braille books for her to read for her courses. How was she going to go through university with no books? Did that stop Tilly? No. Tilly was digging for gold. She created her own Braille books using a simple slate and stylus. She punched out those Braille dots, translating every single letter and symbol in those thick university books. It was such a laborious task that she couldn't do that and study at the same time, and she had a mental and physical breakdown. She had to abandon her studies. Her dream of going to university was dead. Did that stop Tilly? No. She was digging for gold. Determined to make sure that didn't happen to any other blind person, in 1894, she created the Victorian Association of Braille Writers. She was determined to make sure that every blind person had the opportunity of knowledge through Braille books. Then, in 1895, she created the Association in Australia for the Advancement of the Blind. This organisation did such great things for blind people in Australia. For instance, she stopped the archaic practice of a blind person having to pay a £400 bond just to go across into another state. She also successfully lobbied for the right for a blind person to vote. Why did she do all this? Because she was digging for gold. Tilly Aston was one of those rare, heroic individuals born to true disadvantage and adversity, who rise above those challenges and then show the way for us all. Tilly said that poor eyes limit your sight, but poor vision, that limits your deeds. Tilly Aston was a visionary without sight, yet she saw more than many sighted people did. Today, Los Angeles, Australia, we've seen some devastating bushfires. In the cities and in some of the towns, there's civil unrest. Globally, we're all living in fear under the cloud of a pandemic. And raising its ugly head once again is geopolitical politics, unease, escalating unease among nations. Sometimes we wake up to a dark world. But we can follow in the footsteps of that little girl, Tilly Aston. In these troubling times, you too can still be digging for gold. Just make sure it's real gold, because there's a lot of fool's gold out there. Fool's gold looks like gold. It glitters. It feels like gold. It feels substantial. But it's not. It has little value. How can you tell the difference between real gold and false gold? Fool's gold? Well, you've got the same prospecting tools that Tilly had. You've got your mind to think. You've got your heart for empathy. And you've got your two hands to do positive deeds. What you do with your prospecting tools, well, that's up to you. But use them wisely. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been many, many years now since that little girl stood on that boardwalk listening to the stagecoach coming into town. Today, in these difficult times, I'm holding on to the hand of that little girl, and she's got a question for all of us. She's asking, are we digging for real gold? When that little girl turns to you and asks you, what are you going to say when she says, are you digging for gold? Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Karl. You have benefited us with your inspiration, and maybe we can use those skills that we learn in Toastmasters to go out and do those good deeds that we certainly can do with the skills that we develop. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being here. I certainly hope that one of the things that today's experience will do is inspire many of the audience members to visit clubs in other parts of the world and learn from them and share the skills and talents that you've gotten from your own particular local area.